Welcome to Making Meaning, the podcast where we're going to do a deep dive into a hot topic. I'm going to introduce my panelists, just their name. If you want to read more about them, go to the bio or the description and read that. I'll start with Kim Harpham. Did I say it right?
Yeah, you did.
Good. And I've got Karen Voorhees. And then over in my right hand corner, I have Pamela Brasunas. I don't even know. Am I saying it right?
You are. I go by Pamela Mendoza Brasunas, but yes, you are saying Brasunas correctly.
And to learn more about our panelists, go look at the description. Today we're getting into the hottest topic in the world at the hottest time of the year. So if we're all sweating, it's because both it's a hot topic and it's very warm where we are. We're going to talk about fertility trends. And I'm just going to call it trends because we're all going to be seeing this in different ways. And we're going to explore this topic. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually share some data. I'm going to share some data chart. And I want us all just to take a look at this table so we can just ground ourselves in the latest fertility numbers. So take a moment. And if you're driving or something, look at this when you get home to somewhere safe. So this is a chart that compares the total fertility rates from 1970 to when I pulled this, and it's pulling from 20 to 2023. And I will again have all the citations for this data in the show notes, so go ahead and check out the details. All right, so let's all just I would love to hear a reaction from our panelists on this data. What are things that jump out at you as you look at this table?
Okay, Beth, so I'm going to start and say
Kim.
fertility. When you told me we're going to have fertility trends, I had to go and look up what that meant. And what it means is children per women, which I think is really weird because, infertility, fertility, IVF, all of the kinds of hot topics you're talking about are the men's, have to do with the men too. And so I thought it was really weird that what we're really talking about is how many children each woman is having where.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So we're not talking population. We're not talking infertility. We're not talking about men. We're not even talking about copulation equals population. We're talking about how many children women are having.
Yes. And this is how it's measured, Kim. And we're going to be exploring this for the next hour and change. So yes, absolutely. Thanks for calling it out. You would definitely be the one who would be specifying. But this is just how it's measured across the planet. Anyone else want to? Yes, Karen.
Yes, this is a trend I have been following for several decades. It does not come as news to me. Yes, the how many children per woman in a lifetime is a convenient single measure, but it's an overall demographic. And this is completely counter to what the story was when Kim and I were, in our teens and 20s coming of age. The story back then was, what's his name, Paul Ehrlich, that there's a population bomb because he saw the population going up, 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 up. He did not realize that it was going to be an S curve. And so my generation, the boomers, has been imprinted by this terror of overpopulation. And it turns out that what the people who know about this in real life are worried about now is that the population of the earth is going to level out around the mid-century and then decline precipitously. And that's what the experts are far more concerned about. And I've been following this with interest. And in my opinion, I think this is one of the biggest challenges of the century. It's right up there with climate change and maybe even a bigger challenge than climate change. I think we will manage it. Homo sapiens is incredibly versatile, but I think it's one of the biggest challenges we face this century. And we'll get into this more later when we talk about social structures and so on.
Absolutely. And Pamela, just looking at this data, anything jumping out at you?
Well, immediately what jumped out at me is that, we're looking at a 53-year span here, but there's not a single country that hasn't, decreased their TFR by 50%. So that's pretty striking. And that was the first thing I noticed when you sent over the data. I knew there has been a decline in sort of, well, you could call it fertility, or you could call it the decision to have a child. You could call it lots of things. There's been a decline, but I didn't actually know the numbers were this large in terms of the percentage drop.
Yeah. So replacement rate is 2.1, just so everyone kind of is on the same page. Kim.
Well, there's one question here. So it says minus, I'm looking at the first number. So 1970s in the United States, minus 2.5. I don't understand.
Minus 2.5. It's
That's
between
the range.
2.5 and 3.
Okay,
Yeah,
there's a negative in front of each one of those numbers.
It's not. That's not a minus sign. That's a tilde.
Tildes.
It
means approximately.
There it is, my glasses. Thank you very much. See, when you're
Yes.
73. All right.
The first thing, we need to just be on the same page about the data. Kim, go ahead.
Well, I just want to recognize that this doesn't reflect population. So I went ahead and looked up population because, yes, Karen and I were in college in the late 60s and early 70s. And yes, I did join zero population growth for the reasons that Karen talked about. And yes, then I did look up the actual stats. And 1805 was the first time that there was a billion people. And then we see a very large upswing in population after the Civil War. This is worldwide data. And then we have this gradual incline until during and after World War II. Then we have a very big upswing. Mm-hmm. When Karen and I graduated from college, well, me in 1972, there were 3.88 billion people.
Okay.
So now there's over 8 billion people. I just need to have that pointed out. So we're not dealing with what is like the scourge of the earth, that there won't be enough people to do what. So in 1972, there were 3.88 billion people on Earth, less than of what's now. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
We're going to have a very heated discussion, and I specifically picked these panelists because I knew they have different opinions and we're not trying to get to consensus today. I actually want to hear all these different viewpoints. All right. So I'm just going to point out one or two things, and then we're going to stop sharing this and just have a discussion about it. So the first thing that jumps out to me is South Korea has the lowest at 0.78. 0.78. Replacement is 2.1. So there's something very serious going on with the South Koreans. So if any South Koreans are watching, please put comments in there in the chat after. Okay, and then America, which has been doing really well about making a lot of babies, we're down to 1.7, and I think this happened during the pandemic. If anyone wants to fact check me on that, the CDC did pull out some data, and I will be sharing all the data in the show notes. So if you want to dive into that a little bit deeper. So yeah, the CDC has said that the births has declined by 17%, and general fertility has gone down 21%. So I can show that data if you guys want to see that. Let me just go ahead and pull that up, because I do think it's quite shocking. America has been making a lot of babies for a long time. We've been very good at that. And so I feel it's quite alarming. But maybe not everyone's alarmed, and that's why we're going to have this really interesting discussion. So yeah, so here's the CDC data. So in 2023, who is good at math? What number is this? Is this 3 million?
3,596,000.
3 million. Once it has so many numbers, I'm like, I don't know what this is anymore. Okay, so 3 million babies, 3.5, actually 3.6, were born in 2023. Down 2% from 2022. So we're still making a lot of babies, to Kim's point, right? A lot of babies were being born. And then the general fertility rate for the United States decreased 3% in 2023 to 54.5 births per 1,000 females. It all gets a little, I feel like it's the numbers become a little bit challenging with this like per thousand. But anyways, you can see that it has gone down. So that is the main takeaway. But what does this all mean? We're going to now bring it back to the humans, stop looking at the data. The data sometimes just we get lost. So I'm very interested to hear why you think, and again, we're not trying to get to consensus. I'm just trying to understand what people are seeing in their own world, the things they've heard. Why is it that these numbers are like this? And is it something that, looking back at the history of humanity, evidently we were good at making babies, but a lot of them did die. So let's just kind of like jump backwards a little bit in time and, thinking about birth in the fullness of time, not that we're going to spend tons of time on that. Does anyone have anything that's popping up for them thinking about the history? Karen, our historian.
I'm a historian, a cultural historian, and I like big pictures. Up until around 1800, a little before, the average life expectancy on this planet was roughly 30 years, give or take a few years, depending on where and where. 27 when we were all hunter-gatherers for like 3/4 or 5/6 of our existence as a species. And that's not because nobody lived to grow old. A few people did. It's just that so many, a third to a half of all children born alive died before they were 5. That was life until that started to change around 1800. That's the Industrial Revolution right there. And then average life expectancy, as you notice, has been going up and up and up. Even in a little fact, in 1935, when Social Security was first created in the middle of the Depression, average life expectancy in the United States was 65. Now it's close to 80. That's why 65 was the age when Social Security starts, right? I mean, if you live beyond that, we'll support you, but you made your contribution. I mean, the demographic situation has changed so rapidly. And now to have in our generation, maybe the one before was the first where you expect most people who are born alive to live to grow old. That never happened before in the history of humanity until very recently. Big change, Industrial Revolution, sanitation. I'm sorry, but vaccines, modern medicine, right? That's why we're living older, better nutrition. And I'm going to jog just a little bit and say in 1960, there were 2 point something billion people alive. 40% of them did not get enough to eat to maintain optimum health. 40% of the world population in 1960 were so poor that they could not afford. They had food insecurity. Today, at over 8 million people in the world, that number is 12%. Look these up, right? We are not only are we burgeoning in our population, and that's going to level out. Paul Ehrlich was wrong. He was wrong about just about everything. Malthus was wrong too. So our population is slated to level out between 9 and 11 billion around the turn of the century and then decline. And we'll be talking about the decline because that's what the people who know what they're talking about are really worried about. But we remember at the same time, somehow, even though we now have more than 8 million people on the planet, in spite of all the concerns about sustainability, and they are real and we need to address them, but only 12% of the population is so poor that they can't afford a healthy diet. That's down from 40%, right? In 1960, and we are on track, depending how things go in the next year or two, we are still on track to meet the millennium goal of virtually no malnutrition due to poverty by the year 2035. Nearly 0% of the world's population will be able to afford a sustainably healthy diet. Now, can we do that sustainably? That's a related question. And there are a lot of big gnarly questions that are interrelated here, but there are some very concerning trends here and some very hopeful trends. So climate change is a biggie. I am not as hysterical as a lot of people. It is a big one. But I think the population demographic is one of the biggest challenges we will be facing in this century because the trend is going to change abruptly. And while I think we will adapt, this is going to challenge us the same way climate change is challenging us. And that's going to get to some of our institutions, our social and political institutions. So that's my 2 cents worth for now. Can't hear you, Bet.
You're on mute.
Why wouldn't it be like that? Karen, it sounds like you did some pretty good homework, and I'm extremely impressed. Very nice. Very,
Well,
very fascinating. You
As I
brought
said, I've been
guns.
following this for several decades.
You brought some guns to this knife fight, and I'm very, very excited. Okay, I want reactions. Come on.
Well, I'm going to say,
Who's
sure,
next?
I'll say, but I want to hear from Pamela. So let Pamela speak first, and then let me ask a couple questions and go a couple directions.
Well, the first thing I'm going to say is I didn't do my homework. I didn't do much homework because I was like, I'll just speak from personal experience. But I am also a new mom. So I have a 4-month-old and I didn't have a ton of time to do homework. But I would say that I haven't. So the birth gap that we watched sort of set the tone for almost like a narrative about we were going to be an overpopulated, planet Earth, and all of the devastation that would come with that. And I really feel like, because we touched upon this earlier, Karen, that the boomers were aware of that and wanted to possibly not have an effect on the overpopulation. And so your generation might have been like the first one to be like, we don't want to overpopulate, but I can tell you for sure that's definitely continued into, the next few generations because I think the perspective might have been shifted. I feel like it's a little more climate geared or environmentally geared, like the fear of just using or utilizing up all of the Earth's resources or demanding too many resources as a single individual on the planet. And so whether or not that narrative of like, hey, we're never going to get to 7 billion people, we're past that now. I still think it's in the energetic of people when they're making the decisions to whether to become a parent or not, or to, have children or not. So I think that is definitely part of the narrative that we are, I don't know if we'd say we're up against, but it's still there. And whether or not it's true, it's definitely having an effect on people within my generation for sure.
Yeah. So that exactly, Pamela, is one of my 3 things that I wrote down. And that's this difference between our looking at it from our own personal lens versus looking at it as a statistic probability. Because I was not going to have children, period. And then at 27, found myself pregnant around an IUD. And I thought, I'm going to rip this IUD out and that'll take care of it. And it didn't. And now my 45-year-old son is really one of my 5 favorite people on the planet. And that took a real deep dive into my personal values. And even more than that, this spiritual understanding, it's like spirituality in practice. Here it is. We have choice. And like Genghis Khan and the spirit and the stirrup as being one of the great innovations, there we are with birth control pill being one of the innovations that makes all the difference in the world.
Yes.
So I made this personal decision, and then lo and behold, circumstances, and here I am with children and bonus children. But it's a reflection of not just me personally, but also, our cultural development. So there's my interior I and my personal decision. And then there's this culture I live in, which in the United States is pretty diverse and has a whole mess of value systems represented. So there's my personal value system. And then there's all of these other, what in integral theory we'd call developmental levels that all reflect these different values that all are totally legit and have warranted meaning and understanding. But what really is happening is science says reproduction is for the survival of the species, period.
It's for
And
what?
science, empirical, Western, after Descartes, says that reproduction is for survival of the species, period. That's what we're doing. So if our question is survival of the species, and we have manipulated all human beings have manipulated all of these other pieces and parts of our environment, then is it? Those are my questions.
Wait. So you said you had three things. You said your personal view. You didn't want to have a baby. You had a baby.
Versus the culture.
And then there's a culture. Was there a third?
Right. Well, more than culture, there's developmental levels.
Mm-hmm.
So as I grow and learn and am more aware, my notion of my own fertility changes. If I don't have any self-awareness, if I don't know, about how reproduction happens, then my life is going to look different.
Yes.
And in my life, I taught children who were of very, very strident evangelicals who would not let me as their teacher teach them, even though they were pregnant. So 3 is this notion of biology of survival.
Mm-hmm.
Are we really in that position?
Ooh.
I know.
Ooh, okay. So we've all been able to sort of weigh in on the past and where we've come. And now I kind of want us to talk about this option of choice. I love my memoirs and biographies, and I'm reading this one about this economist. Maybe you guys would know him, Glenn Lowry. He wrote this memoir, and by the time he was like 19, he had 3 kids.
Mm-hmm.
He did not know where they were coming from, okay, clearly. And it's just interesting. This is a genius who just looks at math and it comes clear in his brain in a way that many people, don't even understand anything. And he's being sort of like held back because he has to work, earn money, pay for his unfortunately, there was many different women involved in the, these babies. And it's kind of sad because you just want him to focus on the genius stuff that he's discovering all these things. And he still is doing a lot of work despite that. So if you think now, we have a choice and everyone can, be very intentional about having a baby or not having a baby, which by the way, has not been the past. I mean, in the past, people, I think of many women that I have really thought of as role models, such as Grace Hopper. She was writing code after her 5th baby was born in the hospital bed. And Lady Lovelace was, she had 3 kids and she's the one who invented programming languages. All my stuff about programming. Mm-hmm. Clearly, I love software. So it's just these stories of these women who are just giving birth and, still making breakthroughs, which is amazing. But now we have a choice. So there was this technology invented that was much better than many other things that were tried. And women have been trying to not have a baby, like continually throughout all of history. We all can attest to the terrible things that women have done to just like not have a baby. And then, of course, there's a lot of terrible stories about queens who were trying to have a baby and couldn't have a baby. And it's just like whenever you want them, you can't have them. And whenever you don't want them, they just keep coming out. All right. So I'm throwing that out there to the group. I have a hand, Pamela. What's coming up?
So I'm just referring to something that Kim said, that we have a choice, and you're referencing choice as well. But I think that's what we kind of need to dive into a little bit, because what came out of the birth gap, at least some of the percentages, is that 10% are childless by choice. These are some of the women reporting, right? 10% are childless for medical reasons, so aka infertility. And they said the other 80% are childless because of circumstance, right? So circumstance in the sense of they never found the right partner, or circumstantial that they just wanted to really focus on their careers first because they were told that this is the ticket and the pathway to a happy life is, be your own woman, be a successful woman, have a career that's not dependent on a man, or that, all of these, sort of cultural influences that I would say that when, I think that this 80% number is sort of like, whoa, I didn't think about this soon enough. I was on this other autopilot pathway. And why isn't anyone telling me to be thinking about my fertility at age 20, first of all? Or why are we encouraging people to think about other things at age 20, 30, 35? But, it's sort of like, it's kind of an interesting thing. Like, we do have a choice, but we might not have a choice if we don't put time into thinking about our choices. So just want to put that out there.
Okay, but before we jump into that deeper, which we're going to be doing a lot of, we just have to say, for most of all of history, we never had any choice.
Oh,
just
bingo.
Very putting that really clearly. And just from personal, my mom had 9 babies, 9 children. They all survived so far at the time of this recording, knock on wood. But yeah, so she didn't know. I don't know if she knew where they were coming from, but I think that's like a good picture. And there are many stories of the women that had like 18 children. But anyways, okay, I just want to really clearly say that happened. In what year was the birth control? Does anyone?
I've come up with different answers for when the birth control pill was available, from the 57 to 60 to 62. It was in that window there that birth control pills became available to the public. And I have a personal story about
I actually really, so Karen and I were having breakfast not that long ago. Are you going to share that story?
Oh, sure. Story? If you want me
Whatever story. Karen, you got stories. Let's go.
Okay. Well, yeah, reacting on several things, so from Kim to Pamela. And yes, and especially to nail Beth's point, the pill. I mean, up until, well, they did have rough condoms by the 1700s, the 1700s, like 8 inches of sheep gut with a knot in the end. I'm not kidding. But up to then, it was like, I mean, you take whatever they used instead of coat hangers if you needed an abortion. It was brutal. And if you were a female and you were an adult, unless you were a nun or barren, you better plan on having kids. And of course, all of society the civilized society was around. If you don't protect the women, the mothers and young children, your society does not have a future. Of course, traditional society is very much shaped around this. And the introduction of the pill, especially, is so huge. And I want to nail this point, and then I'll let go and follow up other threads later. The introduction of the pill for the first time in all of human history. Like, we were like, does a harbor seal female say, I'm going to hold off on having children this year because I want to plan a career? No species but Homo sapiens, and only in the last. Like, we had other things we tried and they worked or didn't, and they were pretty brutal. But with the pill, for the first time, we have safe, available, affordable contraception. So women really can be, we are still not always, but we can, in theory, be in control of our fertility. And that is so new on the planet. That happened in my lifetime. And that has an impact on my family. And I'll end up with a little story about how when my mother and father got married in 1952, they thought they wanted 6 children. My mother was one of 6. Her mother was one of 13, farm families. They had 6 children. Yeah, we'll have 6 children. They got pregnant with me 4 months after they got married. They were virgins when they were married. They did the whole thing. The condom broke. Right. And my mother was very fertile. So was her mother. So the next time around with my second brother, they lasted 9 months before they got pregnant with my brother because they were using a diaphragm and the diaphragm didn't work. And so my father, the idea was they were going to put him through college on the GI Bill and he was going to get his PhD in physics. And then, the first time they were the first in their families to go to college. I mean, the great American dream. They came from working poor rural and they went the great American dream. But now they've got two small children. So mother's not able to work. And so dad had made, basically my father put himself through a PhD program while supporting a wife and two small children. And when he graduated, they tried using so after my brother David, they tried using a condom and a diaphragm, and she lasted another 3 years before she got pregnant with my third brother. And at that point, they decided 3 children was what they'd really wanted all along, and the pill happened. So they're able to cap their family at free. I don't know what they went through to get dad through that PhD program. It was brutal. But the difference that the pill makes, I want to say, this is so big. This is so big that we're still not collectively seeing. And some of the fallout is the culture wars, the gender wars about abortion and so on. We are still collectively adapting. We still haven't gotten it collectively how big this is. This changes everything. It's going to change science, society, culture, consciousness, everything. We're going to have to adapt around this. And this demographic trend that Bet has us discussing is one of the fallouts of this.
Karen, that's the story I wanted you to share. She told me the other morning and it was really entertaining. All right, Kim, you were jumping out of your seat there.
Yeah.
Let's go to
there's
Kim.
like 6 things. First of all, stats are really difficult and dangerous because, I remember being told very clearly, and I went and looked it up, but we didn't have the internet, about coyotes could get pregnant, but just hold that baby as a tiny, just a fetus, as a baby, almost a zygote. For months or years before they could have that baby in an environment that would, again, what's the object? Survival of the species. So is that true? Well, I looked it up then and I thought it was. And I looked up the stats that from the Birth Gap film that you quoted us. And I didn't find those stats reflected all the time, Bet. So we really have to look at, okay, there are stats and there's stats. So let's look, I like the word trends when you're talking about trends, because I can go with a trend and I'll agree with Karen in everything she said. And I want to add, and so here's where we run into the difficulty now, I think. A major difficulty is gender roles, because if a woman in the 1800s on the farm was going to keep having all those babies in order to have enough people to run the farm, so this is 1850s, or whatever it was, 40s, when, so all of that took these babies. And if she was doing that, she could not be out plowing and way over there cutting down logs for the barn, etc. There's this problem of logistics. So yes, gender roles now, so difficult. Women should have babies. Well, why? I'm just going to say
God's will.
Why? And a lot of those women in ancient times who were married to a king who was actually, it was his sterility or lack of sperm, let's just call it. Dude, you don't have enough sperm to make a baby. Off the woman, and try it again. Off the woman. So we have this long history of the woman somehow responsible. Next.
Oh, wow, so many bombs there. Okay, so let's just try to see. So birth control pill comes around 60, and
somewhere
now
around
women,
1960.
somewhere around there. So now women have a choice. We can plan. I think the word plan your family. I know there's a lot of political stuff around the word plan, but anyways, that's basically what we can do as women. We can now decide maybe we'll work for a few years, get a degree, and then have a baby. And I think this film, which people don't have to watch if they don't want to, because it is obviously very biased towards certain, the people who made it clearly are biased, and that's fine. Everything's biased. But the idea is that maybe it's more challenging to find a person to have a baby with, which you can have any gender. I don't care. Marry anyone you want to if it's legal in your country. And then, decide to get this baby going. But the thing is, when I think about it myself, I'm going to share my story now. So I am 45 at the time of this recording, 45 and a half. I'm like a 7-year-old. And I have known since I was a small child that I didn't want to have any kids. Like, I mean, it was just something I knew right away as a kid. And one of the reasons why is because I watched my mom have many of her children at home. And not only did I think I got traumatized. I probably need a therapist. Watching a baby get born, it's violent, bloody, as Pamela knows very well. It's a bloody experience. And as a small child, probably not a great thing. And someone should have told my mom, but no one told her. And so I saw a lot of births. And that probably wasn't great for me. But then also the toll it took on her. Like, I have so much empathy for my dear mother, who I love. And by the way, she's moved on to the next dimension, but she deserved that. I don't know where she is, but I'm sure she's living a much nicer existence right now. But she worked so hard, and she was just always tired, and she was always breastfeeding. And God bless her, she breastfed me till I was 3. Think I'm the best bones, really good bones, people. I never have broken any of them. I'm knocking on wood here. So she gave herself, and I think that's a word I really want us to talk about, is sacrifice. Mm-hmm. Motherhood is sacrifice. It's the absolute, maybe it's not the absolute, maybe Jesus is the absolute. But this idea of sacrifice, because you're really giving up so much. And I witnessed that as a small child, and I just was like, nope, I'm not doing that. And I think as I got older, I was like, oh, the planet's going to get destroyed. I'm like, yeah, that's right. That's why. But I really have to be honest, guys. I saw it. There was no delusions. And I had a lot of girlfriends who were like, I can't wait to have a baby. I'm like, do you know what that's about? Like, are you crazy? Anyways, so for me, birth control, like having the ability to choose, has been very important to me. But I also have 6 sisters, and there's about 19, I think, grandkids. And they're loving it. They love having kids, and I'm so glad for them. I really believe everyone should do exactly what they want, which is why we're talking about this today. People should have the choice to do the thing that makes them happy. That's, self-actualization. If you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which the spiral dynamics is sort of built on, inspired by that, which I don't want to go into integral theory because it's too much, but check it out, everyone. But it's like, how can we live our best life? And sometimes that's motherhood, and that's beautiful, and sacrifice is a beautiful thing, or it's getting a PhD or whatever. Anyways, my story is there, that this choice, sometimes people want to have a baby, but they spend a lot of time in college getting some PhD. Then they're like, okay, now I need to find the perfect man. And they spend a lot of time looking for the perfect man, which, by the way, he doesn't exist. So they probably just settle. And now you're like, well, we need to get a house in the country with a farm, and so we can have a dog. And I just feel like those expectations maybe are making a lot of people wait a long time. And that maybe makes it more expensive to have a baby, or more challenging. All right. So I just want to kind of transition us to where we are now. Why are we having some of these trends, and where are we? How can we help? How can we think about this? Pamela, you look like you're about to jump out of your seat. Let's turn it over to you.
Well, I think the decision to become a mother is very, like Kim said, it's incredibly personal, and there's cultural noise that you have to navigate through. So you're going to navigate for yourself, and hopefully you have the skills to do that well. And then you're also going to navigate through the noise to pay attention to what feels or resonates properly with you. when you said many people are waiting for that perfect partner, right? Or they have this vision of like, oh, the white picket fence. Like, of course, these are older stories, but there are plenty of people who are having children by themselves, plenty of women who are taking on the expense, who did the career to be able to have their own child on their own terms with no partner at all. And talk about sacrifice and a lot of work. I think having a child without a partner is, I can't even fathom it. I mean, hopefully there's family involved and there's like friends, but I just feel like, whoa, that's a lot to take on as an individual person. And so I just wanted to bring about that, like, some people are waiting and some people are not waiting because they don't have to wait for that perfect partner anymore. But then you have to plan. We did use the word plan because now it's an economic thing, right? It's a financial process. If you're going to, get supported fertility support, it's going to be economic in terms of, one income in a single parent household. So just things like that, I think, are also some of the factors that are having a huge influence on people deciding to have children or not. Economic
Love
factors.
it. I love this. Karen, you are jumping and dancing in your seat, but you're on mute. So come off mute and share what's going on.
There, my husband settled down now. He's moving around in the cabin and didn't want you to hear his footprints. Anyway, yes, Pamela, you nailed some of the things at the core of my interest in this discussion. I made the decision not to have children, and there are many layers to it. I'll tell my personal story here. I think I was born mostly without a biological drive, kind of like that. Plus, when people, as a kid, people would give me dolls, and I loved my dolls, but I never played with them. I was playing with my brother's, erector sets and Lincoln logs and railroads and out climbing trees. And I was a bit of a tomboy. And then, as I already told you, the world changed when I went off to college, and now there's women's lib, and we've got the pill, and I better not plan on doing what my mother did. My mother it was just an assumption, of course. Her daughter's going to grow up and be a wife and mother. I just assumed I would grow up to be a wife and mother. That's what women did. It's what they'd always done. But now I'm 17, 18, 19, and the world has changed, and I better plan on supporting myself. And this gets to what you were saying, Pamela, that I was reacting to, what it means to raise a child in the developed West. If you're going to raise a child or children and live in a neighborhood where it's safe for them and you, and live in a neighborhood where they have decent schools to go to, you need to be earning a middle class income. If you do not have a partner or a family around you, are you prepared to carry that on your own? So many women do. They are my heroes. And this is one of the adjustments I think we will be making around the middle of the century and after, when people are starting to say, hey, the world really needs more women to be willing to have children. We need to shift our societies so that women, even if they don't have like a marriage partner or some kind of marriage or group marriage or some kind of, the women who are doing it alone have the support of some social structures, because to what it takes to create a career that allows you to earn a middle class income, that's a huge commitment to do that and do what it takes to raise a child well. You have to be there for your children. I watched my friends as they had children, and it was never a mystery to me somehow what work it is raising children. My parents did a wonderful job with us, but my mother was there for us. She was at home, and she supported her and us. To really be there for those kids, to raise them so they're psychologically as well as physically healthy and get a good education, all the investment you need to make. You need a middle class income. To do that on one income these days, wow. The women who do that are my heroes. We need to shift society so that there are social structures in place so that women who would like to have children can have their children, and they will have the support they need to work if they need to work and to raise their children in the way they want to raise them. We need a massive, major shift, and that's going to take a part of the middle of the century, in my humble opinion.
We're going to be looking at the structures of society and cultural norms soon, but first, Kim is like reaching
Well, I just want to
into the
reframe.
camera. Kim, tell us.
I want to reframe. I want to reframe. So
Please.
we're not talking about the world here. And I think that's important. When we talk about 9 billion people by 2050, according to some, and the next century by some. So let's look at those trends again. But we're not talking about just the United States. We're not talking about just look at who we are, white women. We're not just talking about middle America white women. So we're talking about all of these people all over the world who don't have support systems at all, and whose kids are in malaria, and they're in mpox, and they're and they don't have awareness. A lot of these people don't have awareness. They don't have self-awareness. They don't have cultural awareness. So I just think it's important for us to look at our privileged situation and talk about, yes, this is through my eyes here in middle white class America as a woman. I'm going to tell you, I almost died. So here I was with my son that I decided to have. And birth is not an easy thing. As Beth said, it's messy. As Pamela will tell you, she just did it 5 months ago. It's painful. And so I did what I thought I was supposed to do then. And I'm telling you, I had to, at the last second, do this C-section because I was going to die. I mean, I didn't care. That was the thing. When they said we can do blah, blah, I said, I don't care. I was ready to die. I didn't care. So the whole deal about sacrifice starts with the fact that a lot of people all over the world, all the time, every day, die. Go on, Beth.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point about the birthing. Having a baby is very dangerous. It's gotten a lot better, but it's still dangerous in many parts of the world, and that is
Still dangerous here.
It's still
dangerous here.
Dangerous.
It's still dangerous.
It's dangerous.
I was going to tell you guys, I'm planning to send this to my sisters. They almost all have their babies at home. So
Right, which is scary for some people, right, to hear that, like, because we were like, I would never, right? Or you would be perhaps, I would with the right support, that's a touchy subject because it is really addressing a person's like maybe risk profile, but also maybe their identity with their own body and its own capabilities. And like, do I need the support of a medical facility to do this, or do I not? And so that's the I piece. That is the I part that I think, have all discussed, that there is a part of this journey in the fertility journey that the I, and you're right, we are coming from a privileged position here, but the I, if it has the awareness, then you can navigate those other types of decisions, right? Sometimes you have no choice at all. That you are pregnant, you are here at this time and place, this is where your baby's coming out. It's like so there's not even the option to come up with these like, where do I want to birth my baby? But I get it, Kim. Like, we are speaking from a very specific place. And but we were looking at fertility rates, and I think generally the conversation is, why are they going down? And so per women per having children. And so I guess I just want to say that, like, it's a risk factor thing. Some people will be okay having babies at home and would prefer that because it's more risky for them to be in the hospital. And that comes into our personal stories and our personal journeys and our personal awarenesses and education that we feel connected to, right? That we identify with.
Yeah. And maybe this is a good time to mention, I was born breech at home.
Ow.
I came into the world backwards, and I do everything backwards. Karen.
Yeah. Yes. To Kim's point, yes, and the yes. There are still sizable parts of the world today where if you are female, there is no such thing as consensual sex, right? This is the world we live today has a huge range of levels of development in all areas of development, economic and others. in the longer picture, being a historian who likes big pictures, I would say yes. To Kim's point, where we are today, the four of us are speaking from a position of privilege. This is not shared by the whole world. It is shared by a significantly large chunk of the world. And gradually, as I look at the trajectories of history, I say more and more of the world, I'm actually happy to say this, is more and more of the world is going to be more like us and less like the places where if you're a woman, you do not decide who you sleep with when your father decides somebody else decides who you're going to marry, or some warlord claims you, and you don't get to choose who you sleep with when, under what circumstances. Those parts of the world that used to be everywhere. Those parts of the world are growing smaller with some setbacks. We're in one now, but progressively those parts of the world will go smaller, and larger portions of the world will become some variations on like us, where women have the same choices we do. That's the trajectory of the future if we don't blow it too badly, I think I'd say.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So we don't have all time and all space to have this conversation, but this
We
has been
don't.
so much fun. We are going to move into the future. Actually, I think I would love to hear a little bit more about any other cultural reasons why people might not be having babies. And I was trying to get a man to join our discussion today, so it wouldn't just be the women, the estrogen talking, but I unfortunately was not able to. But I am going to I just want to do a plug for some future podcasts. One of them is going to be I'm going to do a 3-part series on healthcare. And I think this
Mm.
whole making babies born in the hospital is like we need to come a long way, because this doctorization and medicalization of birth, I'm sure Pamela has a lot of opinions on that. It's not good. And scheduling C-sections around some doctor's golf game, like, no, that's obviously a first world problem. But there's a lot of things there. And I think that if the healthcare system, and also the cost of healthcare, and there's a lot of pieces in there that we'll jump into in a future podcast.
Okay.
And so we'll just put a pin in that. But another thing is I was trying to get my friend Dan Burfoot, who was on the previous podcast on free speech. If you haven't seen that, please go watch that. Don't forget to like and subscribe. He talked about something called gender alienation. And this is something, he's an expert, or he's been to Japan, he's lived in China, I think he's lived in South Korea, and
Wow.
he studies these languages because he is like an Enneagram 5 and just like a pure nerd. So he really gets into these cultures and watches a lot of their movies and things. And basically the reason why he says the South Koreans, and again, if there's any South Koreans, please put comments in the chat section, that there's this thing of gender alienation, that the men and women are really alienated against from each other. And you can see it in their birth rate, and then also Japan is right
Yes.
behind them with
Right.
that. So there's something else going on, and I don't know if anyone has any thoughts on that before we move into another item here. Is there anything coming up for anyone?
I don't
No,
have
just I'm
experience.
just very interesting to hear Dan's take on that, because I wondered about Japan and South Korea. I know that, I mean, if you have a middle class life, you work like 90, 100, 110 hours a week, and it's brutal. It's
Okay.
far more brutal than it is here. But the gender alienation, that rings true, and I'll watch that and listen, and because I'm curious to learn more.
You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to ask Dan to submit a like 5-minute overview, and I'm going to put it right
Thank
here.
you.
Okay, thanks, Dan. All right, and then let's look at toxins, because there's a real actual fall in birth sperm count, and we have PCOS. So I just want to talk about the medical. When someone is like, yes, let's have this baby, let's do it. They found somebody who they want to make the baby with, and now they have this issue. Does anyone know anything about this besides maybe just some news stories about this? All right, Pamela, talk to us about what's going on with this. Is this real?
So, yes, our health is at stake, and we need to get on board with becoming the healthiest people we can, getting out of some of the systems that we're already in that we can't quite see. So for women, and men or who are interested in having children, we have to be very aware of sort of the toxic load that our bodies are taking on. And women especially have to be aware of endocrine disruptors. So endocrine disruptors are everything from like caffeine, red meat, various toxins that might be in like our cleaning products, our common cleaning products. So I have 2 children, and I just want you to know that I don't think I would have been able to get pregnant at all if I had not done all the blood work I did prior to the birth of my first son. So my numbers were not in range at all. When my husband and I tried to get pregnant, we got pregnant pretty fast within like 2-3 months, and I had a miscarriage. And so then I started to pay a little bit more attention to what I was putting in my body. And I even went through a toxology like analysis. And there's a lot of toxins that we're not aware of that are actually in our systems. And so I think taking a look at what we're eating is pretty key if you would like to have children, and also taking a stand for sort of the things that are in your house. Maybe even if you can, once again, this is a privileged decision, right? But like even where you live, possibly, what are the toxins in the air and in the water that are literally right in your communities? It's kind of hard to find them, discover them, but there are a lot of people kind of uncovering these type of things in their communities, and it's definitely worth paying attention to.
Pamela, thank you so much. And does anyone know anything about the falling sperm count? Anyone?
Well, I'll just say from personal experience, I have a son-in-law who didn't have enough sperm, and they really wanted to have kids. And so I'm going to go back to not gender alienation, but this whole men's liberation that I hope we get to have. White dudes for Harris, I think that's hilarious. But nonetheless, how men's masculinity they can feel inferior because they don't have enough sperm. But there are a lot of men who don't have enough sperm, and so therefore IVF, etc. So I just look at the complexity of gender roles, gender identification, what it means to be masculine. Can we have men's liberation? And then out of that, I also look, Pamela, thank you for bringing up all that toxicity, because what's the result? The result is not only is there infertility, but there are fetuses that can be told immediately through our medicine they're not viable. And so what are we doing with that when we're looking at reproductive choice? You know, I can have a sonogram, I can have a blood test. I can do that really early in a pregnancy, and especially as an older person, you would do that. And the probability of there being something wrong with fetus due to toxicity is high.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one of the first things that everyone should do is men and women should not be carrying their phones on their body. Radiation right there next to wherever you put it. So if you're putting it in your pockets, right next to your testes, your ovaries, you're already like generating radiation in like your fertility region. And so these are the things that people don't totally think about. And I didn't think about it. I had to have a friend. I was literally in the car with her, and she's like, "You want to be a mom, don't you?" And I said, "Yeah." And she literally took the phone out of my pocket, and she's like, "Stop wearing the phone on your body." And I just was clueless. And I thought about it, and I did a little research later, and I was like, okay, this is an unseen potential radiation that I carry around with me every day. So how close do I want that to my body? And do I even want it next to me when I'm sleeping? You know, these are part of the disruptors.
Yeah. I think this is all really, really good stuff. And by the way, another plug for a future episode. I am going to have an episode on the state of men, the state of men. So that is going to be extremely hot and contentious.
So
Okay. Yes.
one last thing that Karen brought up quite a while ago was the difference in our lifespan. So I want to
Yes.
point out that whole element of the elder. And, Bob Keegan, Harvard psychologist, who says, well, what if we're staying old because that is the answer for survival? There's a great YouTube, let's see, Rebel Wisdom, evolution. I have it written down. I don't have it up.
I'll put it in the show notes.
Thank you.
We'll put a link.
Yeah, because Bob basically says, yeah, we're way older. So he is the conversation he's having is not about fertility trends, but I think this fits. When we're looking at how many kids a woman is going to have over a longer period of time, because we have the medical capability to do that in more and more and more of the world, then we also have the capability of that person is going to last a lot longer on the planet, and the planet's resources have to manage that for a lot longer. Survival, according to Bob, because we gain awareness as we grow.
Hopefully.
Wow. Okay, there's so much here, and we only have about 5 minutes left.
I'll be quiet now. Thank you. I just had to say Bob Keegan.
I love it. All right, so how do we wrap this up in 5 minutes, ladies? So I want to just go around the room and just see, does anyone think that we're in trouble, yes or no? So rapid fire, Kim, are we in trouble? Are we in trouble?
For what? Yes, we're in a lot of trouble. Do we have
fertility? Fertility. This topic. Are we in trouble, Kim, or you think we're not? No. Pamela, are we in trouble? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, that was a yes. Karen, this is the rapid fire.
Okay, I don't think the answer is binary, but we certainly are challenged. So I'll say a conditional yes.
I love how I cannot pin you ladies down. Okay, or it's very challenging. All right, so because we only have like 4 minutes left, and I think the healthcare stuff and the state of men, all these things are going to help bring the bigger picture together. What do we do? And I want to go to the personal, because we all have friends. Some of us have kids, some of us have grandkids, some of us have, nieces. What do we do to support and help people, I think, be actualized and make precious new little babies? Well, like, what if they want to? Pamela, what do we do?
Well, the first thing I really want to say is I think we should be honoring our elders a bit more.
Hey, thank you.
I think it's incredibly hard to embark on this parental journey if you don't have the wisdom of the elders, and they're here and they know a lot. And so I just really want to plug in, like, we don't have to figure these things out in our 20s, 30s, 40s. We should be talking to our elders and getting real wisdom from their experience and some of the decisions that they've made. So that's the first thing I'm going to say. Next thing I'm going to say is that people need to take care of themselves and look at their toxic load, look at their habits, look at their conditioned tendencies. Are these healthy conditioned tendencies, or are they just status quo? And are we going to get out of, are we going to be our best population or fertile people if we're just going to be status quo? And, in America, the status quo is not looking that great right now. So we have a lot of work to do. And so, just start with yourself, take a look, see your environment, and see if there's any small things that you can do to really make a big change in your physical experience of this lifetime.
That was beautiful. All right, Karen.
Yeah, 2 points, leapfrogging off of Pamela's 2 points. For your talk on healthcare, what is our responsibility for self-care? It's not just responsibility to us, it's responsibility to the entire community as we slowly move toward universal basic income, which I think is inevitable. and a universal healthcare system, which I think is necessary, inevitable, and morally right. But that puts a moral responsibility on each of us, not just for our own selves and the people around us, but for our larger society, because it's the taxpayers, basically, well, to make a brutal oversimplification, are paying for my negligence if I end up costing the system $100,000 because I ate potato chips all day long and nothing but. So what is the future for a future system? What are our responsibilities for self-care? It goes beyond just us and our immediate families. And yes, to support, I'll just do a personal to answer your question, that those of us who did not have children, whether we had a choice or not, I chose not to. I support those of my friends and family who do have children. While my contemporaries were having children, I loved getting together with them and holding the baby while mom could drink her latte without being interrupted. Playing with the kid for a couple of hours while mom went off and done something, and then I could hand the kids back afterwards, right? And right now, as an elder, thank you very much, Pamela. In 2 weeks, I'm flying off to Portland to visit my two nephews, neither of whom has children and probably won't. But there's an extended family. My one nephew's half sister, who is not a blood relative, but she was part of our larger family context. She now has two young daughters, and I am getting together with them. I offered, because I can afford to. I'm going to spend Sunday taking their family and my two nephews, if they want to come, someplace where those two girls would really love to go, and I'll cover it. I'll pay the costs so the girls can have, the family can have a wonderful day together, and another indulgent elder to play with the kids. So in these a little personal way that I can support those women who do have families. I love kids. I love them. I think it's wonderful that other people have them. I cheer them on, and I really like kids, so I'm glad to share them occasionally.
Thank you, Karen. All right, rapid fire. Kim, what are the things we can do to be supportive in this current environment?
I don't understand the question. Do you
So,
mean what Pamela and Karen just did?
yeah, wrap up,
Okay.
final
So I
question.
don't have a wrap up. I think this is way so personal. And so I'm going to do it again, what I said earlier. What we can each do personally is our own personal gift, our own personal experience as privileged white women in this time. So what we can inspire others to do becomes entirely different depending on their context and our relationship with other. And so that becomes community. And so in my community, what do? I work with college kids. So what do? I'm going to teach leadership. Why? Because I think leaders and anybody who believes they're a leader, a mom is a leader. Yeah. I think anybody who has that idea understands that they're holding this space for human development. They're saying, yes, we can become more aware than we used to be. And that's the long-term context, is the more humans that recognize that there is sovereignty in individualism, you do get agency. You can find empowering ways to become more aware, and you can grow and learn your whole entire life. That's the best we can do. That's the best we can do. I don't have an answer. We don't have an answer.
This is perfect answer. Thank you, Kim. All right, we are doing wrap up, and where can the audience find you? And do you have anything to plug? Pamela, do you have like a blog or a book or something? And where can people find you?
Well, I have a website.
All right.
I have a website. I don't have a book. I have lots of stories I love to share with people, especially verbally. But I can be found at butterflybirthing.com. So that's butterfly birthing, all one word, even though it's two words merged, butterflybirthing.com.
I will put that on the screen and in the show notes.
Yeah. And then also my LinkedIn as well, Pamela Mendoza-Brasunas. You can find me there as well.
I will put that. And are you available as a doula officially still, or do you do that work?
I definitely work with women on their preconception journey. Sometimes their decision not to have children is another thing I do. yeah, there's a lot of ceremony that is around this decision. If you have the privilege of being able to make a decision and feel that you have choice. But yeah, I also am very well resourced with lots of other fantastic healers, women, people who work with the body, healing past traumas. I mean, some of this is the work that needs to happen pre-pregnancy. But there's a lot out there. So if any of that resonates with any person that's listening, and you can be a male or female, identify however, there's a lot of resources out there for you. So if you're in question about any of these things, please reach out.
All right, this is fantastic. And again, all the information is going to be in the show notes. Kim, do you have anything to plug? Anything? How about this holistic education system? Because people, once they have the baby.
Where you can find me
Yes.
is at Southern Oregon University Center for Holistic Teaching and Learning. So our notion is that all those babies, all those kids, we would love to have an education system that is for the whole person, the whole being.
Yeah.
So physically and cognitively and emotionally and spiritually, and to have that type of an education paradigm. So we're working with that.
I love it. I love it. I'm going to put that in the show notes. Karen, where can people find you? Do you have anything to plug today?
Yes, as you know, I have a website. Bet has helped me put it together. If anybody's interested in following up, Bet will be putting that in the links below. I have 4 short works of writing, creative writing, visionary writer. I look at the deep past and track the trajectory into what I think our future is through this, more or less through this century. And I do it through works of creative visionary writing. And there's a small chapter from my writer's journal and a few other statements there if you want to send to me. Also, there are links to several other things I've been on that are on YouTube, on the internet. So Bet will plug that in down below.
Absolutely. Check out her writing. It is really incredible. Thank you to my panelists. I love the energy that you all brought, the presence, and the being able to listen to the different perspectives. Again, we're not trying to agree on something. It's a very complicated problem, but I really appreciated it. And thank you to the audience. Please click like, subscribe, and share with a friend. And we'll see you next time. This was Making Meaning. Bye, everyone.
Bye, Beth. Thank you.